All right, let's dive into something that'll really bend your brain. Today, we are digging into this incredible philosophical argument from the 1800s, one that tries to prove God exists by arguing that he can't be proven. Yeah, I know, it sounds like a total riddle, but it's this really deep piece of thinking that just flips the whole idea of proof completely on its head.
Just let that sink in for a second. It's the perfect paradox, right? And it's the absolute core of this amazing argument from way back in 1877. This one sentence is basically our key to unlocking a pretty dense, pretty challenging, but wow, a really rewarding piece of philosophy. So let's see how he actually builds this case. So who would even dare to make a claim that sounds so contradictory? We need to meet the man behind the argument and understand the massive project he set for himself.
Our guide on this journey is Elijah Benamozegh. He's a philosopher and a rabbi living in Livorno, Italy, right in the middle of this huge upheaval of science and new ideas. You know, he saw this growing gap between the world of faith and the modern world of reason, and he basically decided, okay, I'm going to take on the challenge of building a bridge between them. Now, Benamozegh was working in a field called theodicy, and usually theodicy is all about tackling that one super tough question. If God is good, why is there so much evil and suffering? Benamozegh definitely touches on that, but his goal is even bigger. He's trying to defend the very idea of faith itself, but using the other side's tools, logic and reason. He actually called his own project a Herculean task, which, yeah, sounds about right. His goal was huge, to show that these ancient religious truths could totally hold their own against the tough questions from modern science and philosophy. He wasn't just writing for people who already believed. He was aiming squarely at the skeptic, the scientist, the modern thinker. So to start this massive undertaking, Benamozegh doesn't begin with some abstract formula. Nope. He starts with something we can all see: history. His first line of attack is what he calls a positive argument, and the claim is that the evidence for God is basically written all over the story of humanity, like a fingerprint. And to drive this point home, he pulls out this quote from the ancient historian Plutarch. Think about that. It's a really powerful observation. You can find societies that lack things we think are essential, walls for protection, written laws, money, but you will never, ever find one that doesn't have some concept of the divine. For Benamozegh, that's no accident. That's a major clue. So he builds this case by pointing to this constant, this universal thing across all of humanity. I mean, from the very roots of our oldest languages to what we dig up from prehistoric sites, the signs of religious belief are just everywhere. He even slips the script on paganism. He doesn't see it as a contradiction, but as a kind of foggy, distorted memory of an original, single truth. So for him, this consensus across all people everywhere throughout time, that's not just a cultural habit. That's proof. But, of course, Benamozegh was no fool. He knew this line of reasoning had some classic counter-arguments. So he actually anticipates what the skeptics are going to say, and he takes them on, one by one. It's like a philosophical showdown right there on the page. Okay, so the first skeptic's claim is one we've all heard a million times. Religion comes from fear, right? Early humans were terrified of lightning, of earthquakes, so they made up gods to explain these scary things. But Benamozegh just completely flips this. He argues that if you actually look at the oldest stories, the oldest names for God, they're overwhelmingly positive. They're linked to light, to goodness, to beauty. He says the good, kind gods came first. It wasn't fear that sparked faith. It was gratitude and a sense of awe. All right, next claim. Religion is just a political trick, a tool made up by smart kings and rulers to keep the population under control. And again, Benamozegh just reverses the logic. He points out that we find religious rituals in human societies way, way before we find complex governments or kings. So he says you've got it backwards. Religion wasn't a tool of social order, it was the very source of social order. It gave people the shared beliefs that made society possible to begin with. Now we get to the really philosophical objection, this one from a thinker named Ludwig Feuerbach. The claim is that God is basically just an illusion, a projection. We humans take all our best qualities, wisdom, justice, love,
and we create an idealized, perfect version of ourselves and project it onto some imaginary being up in the sky. But Benamozegh's comeback here is honestly brilliant. He asks a simple question. Where did our finite, imperfect, limited minds even get the idea of perfect in the first place? The very fact that we can even think of an infinite, perfect being suggests that this idea didn't just come from inside us. It's a reflection of something real, something external. And this brings us right back to where we started. It brings us to the ultimate paradox. Because after he defends all this historical evidence, Benamozegh delivers his final, most powerful, and most, well, counterintuitive point of all.
He quotes this medieval philosopher, Solomon ibn Gabirol, who paints this picture of people searching for God as blind men, all stumbling around in different directions. One falls in a pit, another in a ditch. Everyone's trying to get to the same place, but they're all kind of lost. This image perfectly sets up his final, crucial insight about what proof really means. And here it is. This is the heart of the whole thing. It's a fundamental mismatch. How can a finite, limited human mind, our mind, ever hope to completely prove or fully grasp a being that is, by its very definition, infinite and unlimited? It's a logical impossibility. Any proof our little minds could cook up would have to be smaller than the thing it's trying to prove. And this stunning analogy from his text says it all. It just nails it. If you could hold the entire ocean in the palm of your hand, it wouldn't mean your hand is huge. It would only mean the ocean is shockingly small. And in the exact same way, if we could create a perfect, logical, airtight proof of God's existence, it wouldn't prove that God is great. It would only prove that God was small enough to fit inside our human reason. So our very inability to prove him becomes the most compelling evidence there is for his infinite nature, which really leaves us with this final, massive question to chew on. Benamozegh's argument seems to suggest that maybe the human condition, our inability to ever find a final, concrete answer, combined with this universal, unstoppable instinct to keep looking for one, maybe that is the most profound evidence we're ever going to get. Maybe the search itself is the destination. Thanks for joining The Explainer.